Hey friends, you know what makes for great promotion, great marketing, and even great merchandise? Yeah, you guessed it. I'm talking about vinyl stickers. Full color vinyl stickers give life to everything from bold graphics to bright photographs. And our UV coating makes our stickers rough and tough. That's right, they're ready for the weather on your car or a little too much strumming on your guitar. Full color backliner prints are the perfect spot to pass on crucial brand info, let people know about a sale, or pass on a sweet action code for coupons to downloads. jackprints.com, your home for vinyl stickers, available for businesses of all sizes and stickers from 2x2 to 7x7. jackprints.com vinyl stickers, where there's a vinyl sticker just right for you. Vinyl stickers are even cheaper for Circle of Trust members. Go to jackprints.com/Circle of Trust to save even more.
Coming to you live from the Saul Rosenberg Studios, broadcasting worldwide into all ships at sea, here comes another action-packed episode of Adventures in Design.
Good morning and good design. We are hanging out today with Brian Flynn of Hybrid Design and of Super 7. Oh, I hope you have got a clear afternoon. I hope you don't have a lot going on in your calendar. I hope you're not doing too much while you try to listen, because you are going to get smacked silly with so many knowledge bombs. You're going to be begging for mercy after the Flynn bombs just keep smacking your face. I'm your host, Mark Bricky. Let's get started with a very informative Adventures in Design. Hello, friends. Hello, members of the Circle of Trust. Hello, listeners. Hello, new listeners. Nice to meet you. I'm Mark. I do this show 200 times a year. Talk to all kinds of different folks. It's my responsibility. It's the deal that we have, the pact. You work, I talk to folks. You work, I keep you entertained. You work, I try to bring new stories, new perspectives to you. Well, some days on the show, we just kind of hang out, kind of talk some shit. Other days we go down the rabbit hole about, some crazy nonsense. Today's one of those days where it is a knowledge bomb. Brian Flynn has two big things in his career. And these two big things create lots of other big things. So he's a man that stands in the middle of hybrid design. If your dream is to have a boutique agency or boutique design studio, this is the model that you probably would love to have. Fuck you, phone. And on the other side of his business life, if you're a collector, if you like toys, if you like plastic, he owns Super 7, which has really gotten into a very interesting area of the world of action figures, licensing. And so the artist in him has hybrid design, which does some of the best work you'll ever find. And then the kid in him, the sort of, the Frosted Mini Wheats commercial, the adult maybe likes the design, but the kid likes the toys. He's got Super 7, which just seems to be growing and growing and growing. And at this point, I don't know. I think he owns He-Man. I'm not really for sure. We'll find out later in today's episode. But I mean, he's got his hands in so many cookie jars that many of us would like to get them hands into. So on an episode like today, I'm going to encourage you. Listen once, just enjoy it. Listen a second time, consider taking notes. And always keep in mind that as much as he's accomplished, and at the very end, he gives a complete breakdown of the business model of limited edition, supply and demand, and the art of reissuing. Keep in mind that Brian's success is unique to him, his abilities, his timeline on planet Earth, and the opportunities and the way that he was able to bob and weave and create all this. You could do all the same things, and it wouldn't work out the same way for you. So when the knowledge bombs come flying, remember, Apple C, Apple V, cut and paste. Don't ever, 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 ever Apple A. If you select all, it's not going to work. Take the knowledge, put it in your pocket, save it for a rainy day, and when things start coming your way, you're like, oh, I know this. Brian Flynn explained it to me. I understand the the trend in the market. One of the old dogs explained this to me once, and sorry to call you an old dog, Brian, if you happen to listen to this. You and I talk about being old guys in this show and how we're still in love with the things that we found when we were kids, and how in many respects, a kid from Kentucky and a kid from Texas still just kind of chasing down a dream, but every year getting a little bit closer to something that we can hold in our hand. All right, I'm going to wind it down here. We got a long one today, over an hour and 45 minutes of time. Brian gave us all. And then, oh my God, after I turned off the equipment, he wasn't done. I think I just warmed him up. He told me so much great stuff about business, money management, real estate. The guy is just a wealth of knowledge. And he's the right kind of guy because he just wants to share it with other people. And I think that somehow he realizes that sharing it through me gets it over to you. And at the end of the day, if I really had to summarize him, he seems like a guy who's really, really, really smart, super talented, knows that he's been able to take his timeline on planet Earth, manage it about the best anybody could. And he just seems like he eagerly wants to help his employees, his friends, and even people like you that are strangers find that same happiness in creation, in stability. I think he's the type of guy that probably bums him out that most people can't get their shit together. Most people in the creative world want to act like they're a victim of something when they're really only a victim of their own insecurity or their own ego, thinking that somebody one day is going to tap them and make them special instead of realizing that they were special all along. And all they had to do was reach out for it and grab it. What do you say we get into our episode, part 1, with the great Brian Flynn? If you want to find out more about him, head over to Hybrid Design or follow along with Super 7. If you're a collector of toys, if you like pop culture, if you're a bit of a pop culture history buff, check out what he's up to with Super 7. They are constantly creating new things. And when I interviewed Brian, sitting behind him was a huge calendar. And it was the year of Super 7 releases. And each date had stickies on it. And I could read all of the things that they were releasing this year. And I'm telling you right now, good things are coming. Credit cards going to be smoking with all the cash that people are going to be spending, because he's really getting aggressive and making a superior nostalgic product line. By designers, for designers, that's a lot of design. All right, fuck it. Let's get into today's episode. I'm excited for you. You haven't heard this yet. You didn't live it like me, man. I was there when the shit went down. I was there when it got real nasty. Hey friends, just a couple of quick things I wanted to pass your way. This Thursday, Open Space in Los Angeles, I'm doing a live show with the Hood Sisters of Chutzpah Design and Odds and Sides. We're going to talk about their world of designing, marketing, branding, and how they've started to get into creating their own product line with Odds and Sides. It's going to be a great conversation. If you're in Los Angeles, come out. Doors open at 7 for a Circle of Trust meetup. Show starts live at 8 o'clock. And April 6th through 9th, you can find me out in Columbus, Georgia at Creative South. Go over to creativesouth.com for more information. Doing a live Adventures in Design up on the stage there, headlining Saturday night. And then I'm also doing a workshop focused on staying free as a freelancer. Head on out to Columbus, Georgia, April 6th through 9th for Creative South. More information, creativesouth.com.
I'm doing all right. How are you, Mr. Mark?
Dude, it's awesome to have you back on. I put you on the list of people that I could probably talk to, once a week and still find fascinating things about. Where do we start here? Do we still talk about hybrid design? Is that still a passion in your life?
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny thing because Super 7's taking off so much. It's like, a hybrid's obviously doing very well. The sneaker box has been a big deal. It just won Project of the Year. So
can we talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, you want to talk? You want to get close with this one?
The sneaker box. You can go over to the YouTube. You guys created a digital sneaker box that's the size. It's bigger than an automobile, but smaller than a mobile home.
It's probably a little bit bigger than a mobile home because
It is bigger than a mobile home.
because you go in, it's a shop inside. Like that's just the exterior. The digital signage is the exterior. So it projects the lines and everything else to look like it's a sneaker box while the animation is running in the background underneath it and changing and doing different things.
Wow.
And then the inside was a retail store. So you actually walk into the sneaker box and shop.
Literally going inside the brand.
Yeah, I don't think we went as much as inside the brand as just like the world inside the shoe. So that was for a launch of the Foamposite and bringing back nostalgic play on the Foamposite. So we did a whole thing where inside the floor we had the historical with all the old shoes and everything on display, and then we had new Foamposites that were for sale. And that was up for 4 days here in the city.
So that's a level of design that many people are listening to aspire to get to. You know what I mean? Like that's a huge level of design.
No. I am in no way blind to the fact that that's a dream project. And the reality is those projects come about every few years. At best, sometimes you may only get to do it once. Hopefully we'll continue to keep doing it.
You've caught a couple of those though.
We got a few.
Yeah.
We got a few bangers in the closet.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. But that's just like a level of design that people are like, man, if I could get to that moment. But I mean, you've now had a few of those in your arsenal. So you're now a guy that people will come to and be like, we want something like this, right?
Yeah. And we actually have had a few people come back because of the sneaker box and say something to that effect where it's like, we would like something in that world or in that vernacular or with that kind of presence or with that kind of impact. It sort of depends on what their goals are.
Right.
And a lot of times, you know, it's that same thing. It's like, yeah, I could do the same thing again, but it's probably more important for me to really understand what you're trying to get to, which is sort of the core that I always try to do with projects is what's the goal?
Right.
What are we trying to get to first?
Right.
And then we'll figure out what the appropriate project is to achieve that goal rather than just like, hey man, I want something like that.
Can you make my box too?
Yeah, it's like that's great, but are you trying to achieve the same goal Nike was trying to achieve with that sneaker box? And if it's not the case, then the sneaker box isn't the right idea for you, but maybe there is an idea that would be right. And that's the most important part. So with people that have come back to us, that's where we always come back to is really trying to understand what are we trying to accomplish first? What's the goal? What do we want people to walk away from feeling and thinking?
Creative problem solving.
And when you start there, then you can kind of come back to the problem in the brief and sort of really do it. I think most designers react to the aesthetics of the problem, and we try to find the solutions to the problem, and that will lead us to the aesthetic solve along the way.
Okay. You just broke down two different mindsets. If you just want to think about what the art is and always put everything in the same box, then you should become an illustrator or like a style designer. But if you think the way that you're thinking of what's the problem, how do we solve it, that will lead us to the art. That's being a boutique agency of whatever size that you're at, right? Like that's problem solving through creativity.
Yeah, well, I think that's half the design problem right there. It's you know, there's a lot of very talented people out there, and there's a lot of very talented designers, and they make very beautiful things that fail miserably.
Yeah.
And you look at it, you're like, man, that is so pretty.
And we all know those guys.
And you're like, oh yeah, well, it tanked. That didn't do well. It didn't sell. It didn't do that. And in my opinion, that's because the aesthetics didn't solve the problem correctly, which usually comes down to, did you ask the question correctly? So we always really try to sit down at any project and understand, why are we being approached by the client? What is the problem they're trying to solve versus what they're asking me to do? Because a lot of times it's, hey, you did X for dude or gal. Can you do the same for me?
Right.
And usually it's more of a matter of they're looking for a response. They're looking for a feeling. They're looking for an action. They're looking for something to happen to their brand, to their business, to their consumers, to the mindset, to the perception, and whatever it is. They're looking for that tangible result. And so if you're looking for that tangible result, then I have to go back to who you are as a brand, identify who that is, figure out what the roadmap is to the result. And along that roadmap to the result, it's going to lead me to the direction of design that's appropriate for you and who you are. And then once I know that, then I can trick it out or minimalize it or make it rust. I don't know, fucking season it with sea salt and, put it in the oven for a little while and make it tasty. But if I go into it beforehand thinking, well, we got to do video screens, or, oh, nope, you know what? We got to have just the most banging typography on here. And we're going to make this out of mirrors and it's going to be full of crystals and facets and sapphires. It's like, well, that's not going to work for, artisanal baking.
Right.
Or I don't know, I'm making it up, but like, grandma's mud boots pie, it's like, that's not appropriate.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's where a lot of people get hung up, is that they're hung up on the aesthetics and the opportunity than the idea.
And that's why a lot of times when you turn in that first round of work, like the early comps, it's what they asked for. But once they see it, they realize it's not what they want. Like the first round is just sort of like getting them to figure out what it is that they really want, because now they're seeing something visually and they're like, oh, I kind of thought it was going to be more of a monster and less of a scarecrow. It's like, oh, well, we didn't really talk about that yet.
Well, and I think what you're actually alluding to is something that we overtly talk about here, which is, for the most part, clients don't speak design.
Nope.
And reality is most designers don't speak client. The reality is, when a client comes to you, they're briefing you in the vernacular and language that they know how to use.
Right.
If they knew how to get what they wanted, they'd already have it. So they're coming to you to fill in the blanks, for you to try to listen to what they're saying and understand what they're trying to say. It's like talking to a doctor and you're like, just, give it to me straight, like,
am I going to die?
Give it to me in real talk. Like, don't, kind of thing. Like, tell me in words that I can use. So you have to find the words to use for them. And most clients are the same way. That period of figuring it out, that's important, because the reality is that they know that they need something over here and I'm, kind of like this, but they can't really articulate their needs definitively because that's not what they're experts in. But as designers, you can't just, I always hear people talk about the client is stupid or they don't get it. And it's like, it's not that they don't get it. It's that you're not understanding what they're asking for. And it's because you have to know going into it that they don't have the words to explain it to you. You have to figure out the problem. And once you figure out the problem and you put a correct solution in front of somebody, you've all had that moment where it's right. You put it in front of the client and they go, oh shit. And it's not the thing that they asked for expressly. It might have some parts, it might not, but you put it in front of them and they go, oh,
that's it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that. Oh, this looks really good. And they sort of wade into it a little bit and they're like, no, man, this is even better than what I thought this could be. And it's like, that's what they're coming to you for. They're coming to you to figure out the other parts. So when we talk about any of these jobs, it's like, a lot of it really stems from us in the very beginning of taking our time to understand the problem, really understand the client, so that when it comes time to design, we have a very good set of sort of guiding principles or whatever else you want to call it, a clear vision of where we need to get to, so that you can create something great rather than having to just put patchwork on other things to try to make it work. Well, maybe we'll make it blue. Will that work? Well, maybe, we'll add another, it's like, no, that's not going to work, because it doesn't answer the question of why this thing should exist.
Do you remember the first time? Because I remember specifically the meeting I was in and what we were talking about when I was meeting with clients for one of the earlier times in my career. And I said, oh, we'll just make it red and we'll put the type here and we'll do this. And they didn't understand what I just said. And in my mind, I go, oh, I can speak a visual language that these people don't understand. And that's the moment when I realized what my job actually was, is that we see the world in a visual way. We know how to communicate it amongst each other. And that is a skill set all unto its own. But because I'd always I'd always been able to look at toy design, skateboard decks, record covers, and always understand them as a 360 experience, that when I was being hired to deliver that, I'm like, I now know where the talent comes from, that we can see it, we can talk about it, we understand it. That's why you get hired to do it.
Well, and that's a very, very prescient thing right there, because most people miss that, which is literally like you and I and most people listening to this blog. I can say, you see that, say it's a shirt, the guy next to you, whatever shirt he's wearing, or like, Imagine that shirt, but in red. And if you can go like, oh yeah, I know what that would look like in red. That's something 90% of the people out there can't do.
Right.
So you can't expect them to make the mental leaps that you make when you're showing your work or when you're presenting your ideas. You have to be able to show them how and why you got there. And a lot of times if you've really done your work well.
You mean, I'll get that.
You want to get that? I think that's done. Sorry, the phone rang if it didn't pick up on the microphone. Sorry about that. Is that, the client can pick up on some of that stuff, but they can't imagine the unknown.
Right.
That's when we talk about Super 7 a lot, we'll talk about that's a lot of what we talk about. The product that we make is we make the invisible product. We make the thing that hasn't been seen yet. That's in between the other things.
We're going to talk about that.
We're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
But it's that same sort of thing when you're talking about design and you're talking about art. You can see what doesn't yet exist, and you can see the finished product in your head already. You know what it is. Most people cannot do that, and you have to be cognizant of that. And when you get frustrated or annoyed that they don't get it and they don't see your vision, it's like, what do you expect? It's like they can probably rattle off a whole bunch of other things that you have no idea and can't follow, and you're just like, whatever, dude.
We'll be happy that there's the gray space between you and them, because that's why you have a job. That's why you have a skill set, that if everybody understood it, then, everybody could go out and do it. Or like you said, they'd already have it. So hybrid design is I think it's an amazing shop, right? The work's great. You do dream projects. So many people in this world would be so content just to hang their hat on that accomplishment. But then you have the whole other crazy aspect of your life, which is, I know you probably have an internal dialogue for it, but for me, Super 7 is a fan brand, you love that world, you collect that world, it motivates you to work hard and make money so you can buy these things. Like, where does it come in your mindset that hybrid isn't enough and that you have time to do Super 7 and to do more? Because most people would just be happy with that world.
It's not so much that, wanting more. So we'll discount that for the moment. I think more the thing is that I have an opportunity that most people will never have. And that's the point here. And as a fan, I want to make the most of that opportunity.
Yeah.
And to your point, it's very interesting because with the studio, it was I always wanted to have my own place because I was tired of working for other people, all these other things. It's just I wanted to be in charge of my own destiny. I have done that. We have a studio between everybody that works here because we're all part of this. It's not just me. Trust me, it's very little me and most of them. But, we have something that is very unique. In my background, I'm trying to come to grips with this. Coming from Texas, you would never talk about yourself. You're an asshole if you talk about yourself. But
we're going to be doing it for the next hour.
But you just don't praise yourself. You don't, that's for other people to do.
And I'll do it.
Humility. So I come back to this, but at a certain point, I also have to say, look, there's a handful of great shops in San Francisco.
Yep.
And on the West Coast.
Yep.
We're in the top tier, and we're in the top tier in the country. I will say that now. I still feel very, as you can see me kind of cringing when I say it. I don't like to say it, but the reality is we have one of the best studios in the country. And I'm not trying to say that in some sort of weird fucking propaganda way. And the fact that I am somehow taking time away from that to focus on the other thing, I've actually had plenty of internal dialogues about really? You're just, you're sort of hitting on all cylinders here. So let's do something else.
Right.
Take time away from that. Is that really what you should be doing? Because this last year, I've focused the majority of my time on sort of kicking Super 7 up to the next level, and it's working. And it's incredibly weird because now in this last year, the majority of the people that I come into contact with, because I'm dealing with that so much more, only know me as the toy guy. They have no idea I've ever designed anything in my life or that I was even any good at it. They're like, oh yeah, I think he might have done design work before, but I don't know anything about it.
Dude, you're slaying it in the world of design. That's the crazy part of all of this.
That's the weird part. It's so then if we talk about anybody that would be a quote unquote brand or anybody that's an individual that and that we usually come back to and go like, that guy or
Right.
that girl,
Right.
you know, fuck, they killed it. You have that single thing that you can identify them with. Like they did this thing and they just did it to the tilt.
He was in Black Flag. That's awesome.
Or, you know, just simply like, okay, you know, if it's a painter, if it's an illustrator, if it's if it's a designer, if it's any number of these people, like they had their thing and they ran with their lane. Like in some ways it's weird. It's like, oh, my lane is going right now and I'm totally jumping into a separate lane. Like, what am I doing?
Right.
But at the same time, I come back to the reason I started the studio was to do projects I wanted to do, the way I wanted to do them, when I wanted to do them. So, you know what? I'm making toys a whole shitload right now, and that's fine. And even if I'm not involved on every design project, that's okay.
Do you think because you're a punk rocker, come from the world of hardcore punk rock skateboarding, do you think that there's part of you that is attracted to the chaos, that you could just cruise hybrid? You could either take hybrid and make it bigger and do more if you put all your eggs in that basket. Because obviously there's a division of your attention here when you got this much going on. And you even said the last year you're a little bit removed. So you could either put more into hybrid, or you could literally be the guy who's like, I'm the owner. I come in for 4 hours. I eat an apple. I look at what people are doing. I talk to some clients and I bounce out. But is that you like the chaos that you got Super 7 and this going on and you're bouncing back and forth? Is that an attraction of it at all?
No, it's not chaos at all. I think it's just, you know, when you say, oh, we could make hybrid bigger, it's like we've purposely not grown hybrid for years.
You're right where you want to be.
Like the more people we take on means the more overhead we have. The more overhead we have means the more clients and work I have to get. And at a certain point, it's very easy for the work to become less important than the paycheck because you got mouths to feed.
Right.
In a case like us in our studio, it's very much like there are people that have been here over 10 years.
Wow.
You know, and in a small studio, that's very uncommon. And the point is, I'm responsible for these people's lives, not their jobs. Like whether, you know, they're having, you know, we're old people now for all the people listening. Like we got gray hair. I'm 45. We've got 3 kids.
42.
People that work here in my studio have kids now. They have mortgages. This isn't just like play design anymore.
Right.
Like if I fuck this up, like granted, these guys can all go get other jobs, but the reality is I'm not in just charge of the work or this cool, and look, we made a cool poster this week. It's like I'm in charge of these people's lives. I've asked these people to invest the majority of their working day, every day, 5 of the 7 days of the week for the office. So I damn well better take care of them. So in that regard of feeling like I need to take care of those people, I also don't want to just, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, you got to grow, you got to get big. That's how you're successful. I'm like, fuck that. I can do whatever the fuck I want.
Right.
That's successful to me. The size and scale and revenue of it all doesn't matter. And at the size that we're at, because we've got about 18 people, you know, we're big for a small studio, but we're not so big that if I don't have that check coming in, shit hits the fan. And for us, like we don't have, you know, when you talk about big agencies or whatever, they have retainers. We don't have a retainer with anyone. We are still per project, everything.
Wow.
And it's just, that's just the way it is. We do good work. We have really long-term relationships with all of our clients because we do good work and we're not assholes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be bigger. So back to your question, I've sort of circled back around to it is, yeah, even if I wasn't doing Super 7, I wouldn't be pushing hybrid to grow because I don't want to take work for the sake of having to take work. So I'm in a luxurious position and I'm well aware that I don't have to take certain kinds of work to pay the bills.
Right.
So I don't. That way we can continue to focus on the work we want and keep the work level high, which is not common.
Right. So you feel it's 18 people?
Yeah.
You're at your fighting weight. Like you're lean, you're mean, you're where you need to be.
Sometimes it feels a little too big, but it's the amount of people we need to do the variety of work we want to do.
So with Super 7 in the last year, you've basically become, in my world, it seems like you're the owner of the He-Man brand.
Among others, yes. Yeah, we have taken over He-Man.
but your adventure in licensing has been really, really interesting to see what you've done with licensing, how you've moved the brand, how you've put your own thumbprint in it. When you go back and talk to the folks that own He-Man and say, hey, I want to create in this space, when you pitch them, did you have to picture them like, I can take you into a new territory, I can make something new with the brand? Like, isn't that what licensing is all about, is showing them that you're not going to compete with their other licensees and that you're going to take the brand to a new spot in the market?
For some people. For most licensors, the reality is it's more just, do you have a check for the royalties that would be associated with this, and is anybody else doing it? If not, here.
Go for it.
Go for it. Give me your money.
Mm-hmm.
And you pay all your money up front, by the way.
Right, and then you try to work out that debt.
Yeah, work out the business. I think what really happened is Super 7 was the side project. It was the fun project. And what happened is that come 2016,
Mm-hmm.
it had just gotten to a point where it was so big because it kept hiring people and doing, its thing, that if I took my eyes off of it and it slowed down a little bit, it began to drain resources in a significant way on hybrid. Whereas if I kept my eye on it, it made it did what it needed to do, made its money, was growing, doing whatever. But it kind of came to a point where it was a make or break. It was like, either this thing needs to take a step in the next direction and become a certain size that it can be really stably significant. That's not even a good sentence, but I think people know what I mean.
I shook my head. It sounded good.
Yeah, it sounded good. It needed to be stable and significant and hold its own weight and be healthier. Healthier sounds wrong, but just, be able to be its own beast outside of hybrid on its own, or it needed to be cut in half.
Right.
Because it was operating in that awkward teenager phase where, it's sweet one day and wrecks the car the next,
right.
Kind of thing. And it's like, we got to get out of this.
Right.
So that was the question of which way do we want it to go?
As a business owner, that is a perfect analogy too of the relationship with a teenager. Like, oh, you're amazing. Oh my God, how did it all fall apart? I turned my eyes for 2 seconds. How did you get into that? It's an amazing analogy for somebody that understands cash flow.
Yeah. And so, and with Super 7, I think the thing that I came back to a couple times was, one is, we are being presented at this point with the size and scale of Super 7 with opportunities that very few people will ever get to do.
Right.
In terms of being able to work with classic licenses and brands, and at the scale that, there's, you have the Hasbros and the Mattels sort of the world. Then you take down a step and you sort of have the Hot Toys and the Sideshows and the Metacoms and now the Funkos. And then you get down another rung into sort of like the NECAs and things like that. And we're now firmly in that club. Like, there's only 8 or 10 companies out there in the world that are really making toys and stuff at this scale and this, with the licenses, with other things. And if you want to take part in that, if you want to leverage that opportunity, you have to be a certain size, and you have to do things like, I have to build out warehousing. I have to build out distribution networks. I have to build out not all the non-design stuff to take advantage of the opportunity, because as the fan and as the collector, I know that this isn't something that comes around for anyone else. So let's take it and run with it and see what happens. It can all go down in flames tomorrow, and it doesn't, and it sounds wrong, it doesn't really affect me that same way. Hybrid is still going. And if I can do both, great. But I really wanted to be able to say, like, oh, you know what? These are the toys I want to, all the stuff everybody would sit at home and do. This is the toy I want to make. Man, wouldn't it be cool if they made this? Wouldn't it be cool if they made that? Well, guess what? I have the chance right now, for however limited that window may be, to do those things.
And make things like a Shogun Warrior size Star Wars figure.
Yeah.
Which is
Shogun
fucking
Warrior.
Awesome for guys our age.
Oh, yeah. Or same thing, that, as I'm pointing off camera here, since there's no camera, I'm pointing off microphone, is an 18-inch Kenner Aliens Warrior from the second movie. So as a kid, I had the 18-inch Warrior from the first movie, but they never made it for the second movie. It's a slightly different suit. So I'm making it for the second movie. And you know what? I'm making a paint variant on it because I think it looks cool.
Right.
And it's no deeper than that. It's like, fuck, that looks cool. I want one of those.
Yeah.
I get that opportunity. Very few people will ever have that opportunity. And very few toy companies are that liberal with what they make. They're driven by other owners, people with, agendas, profit margins, any number of other things. You know what? There's several projects on the books where I'm like, even if it's a bath, even if we lose on it, I get to make it. Who cares?
So don't take this the wrong way, but it's truly, and I don't want to lessen the brand because I love it, but it's a passion project, right? Like it's a passion project that's doing pretty well.
It's a passion project that right now actually has real business underpinnings in it. It's made the jump.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
But you're still running it like it's like a fan, like a passion project.
Yeah, because I don't have anybody to report to. I'm the fucking boss.
Yeah.
So like, let's just make it awesome.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm going to make up something like, say it's something that needs to be $10 retail, which means I need to be able to sell it to a wholesaler at $5 each, which means I need to manufacture it for $2.50. Straight business keystoning. And we're working on it. And the way to make it awesome means it's going to be $3 to make. I can either make the decision at that point to be like, you know what? We're still going to wholesale it for $5 because it needs to retail it for $10. Or, you know what? We're wholesaling it at $6 and it's going to retail at $12 because fuck it, that's what it costs. In any other place, in any other company, even the small companies that I know that have sort of business guys that own them, it's like, that's not a discussion that you can have like that. That's a discussion of like margins, budgets, overheads. Here it's like, you know what? So what? If we don't make enough money on this, we'll make it up on the next thing. Oh, well, but let's make it awesome. Let's make the one we want to make. And if we don't make the right margin on it, or we don't make this, we want to be smart about our business structure.
Right.
But it's like, we don't have to report somebody. We don't have sales goals we need to meet.
Right.
Everybody's a little aware of how the sausage gets made, which is the analogy I like to use here. And they know what we've got to do so that everybody can get paid. And then after that, it's gravy. But I don't have to feed it to somebody else. I don't have shareholders. I don't have anybody else. So I can just make it however I want. Now, that's not to say that there's not a certain point where you actually think about the market and go, okay, you know what? I can't sell a 2-inch figure for $40. You have to be realistic.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like we can still approach it that way because we don't have anybody to answer to. And that's the whole point of owning my own studio or doing anything else. I can go do shitty work. I can go make shitty toys for anybody else. If I'm going to be making them and I'm going to be using my money to make them, then I'm not going to fucking make them shitty. I'm going to make them the way I want.
Yeah.
Or in my case, the appropriate level of shitty. Since there's a lovely shitty aesthetic out there. Can we say shitty how many times? Do I reach a meter? Do I have a clicker?
God, you'll never outdo me.
Oh, okay.
You can cuss for the next hour and you'll never beat what I've done over these 500 episodes.
All right. That's fine.
I love when you look at a line of toys and you're like, man, they must have lost their ass on that figure because it's so detailed. But man, they're making a sweet profit on Yoda because it's same price, or the Ewok. Like, oh man, they're making a killing on that one. But then you look over at the other figure, like, oh, how much did it cost to make 3PO metallic gold? Or you know what I mean? Like, I love looking at a series of toys that's at the same price point and being like, there's no way all these guys cost the same amount of money to manufacture.
No. The pricing gets into fractions of cents. So
yeah.
Everything is variable. But it's the same thing to me. It's like the difference between good and great sometimes is only a few pennies.
Right.
So then why do you care?
Right.
But I would say my first job out of school, I worked at a company that manufactured goods that made custom things. And there was a product that we were making and I wanted to make a custom piece. And they said, no, we can't make that because they cost a penny each. And I was like, well, we're making like 5,000 of these. And they go, yeah, we have to order 10,000 of them. I go, okay, so it adds, we throw 5,000 of them away or recycle 5,000 of them. That means we add 2 cents to the cost of this thing. And it goes from being just custom printing to custom printing and molding. And, this was a pretty expensive retail item. And they were like, yep, nope, that's not the budget for the item.
Yeah.
And I just remember being incensed at that even then, just like, it's so preposterous to me how people they focus so much on the analytics that they lose the big picture. And
that's what you are. You're a vision guy, right? I mean, that's what you've been able to do with hybrid and with Super 7.
I guess. I mean, but that's the same thing. You make it right, you'll sell more and you'll make your money back.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
But that's why I refer to it, and I don't mean to insult it, but as a fan brand, because you can see the fandom in there, that you can see that you're creating for you. Now, my big question is, why He-Man? You're a little bit older than me, and I felt like when He-Man came out, I was hardcore G.I. Joe, hardcore Transformers. He-Man came out, I'm like, I don't know, man. It just seems kind of lame. You seem a little bit old for He-Man.
Well, yeah, that's a very fair analogy, and very fair question, and we will discuss it right now. I was a little old for Masters of the Universe. True. My little brother ran with Masters of the Universe. I was heavy into Star Wars, and then, as Transformers, G.I. Joe, and Masters came out, that's a little bit after my time. I'm not saying I wasn't aware of it, but it's a little after my time. I didn't spend every waking moment with it the way I did Star Wars and Battle of the Planets.
I love Battle of the Planets.
So, but when I went back, so Josh, who's my right-hand man at Super 7, is diehard Masters of the Universe. Diehard. But more importantly, though, is I went back to Masters of the Universe, and I just looked at it objectively, and I said, okay, what do I like about this show? What do I like about these character designs? What's interesting to me? I can understand it from the analytics of it from a collector point of view, like this was made first, this was made second, here's what the packaging looked first, then second, here's what the variant packaging looked like in foreign countries. I can do that all day long as a collector.
You love the minutia of stuff.
Oh, man, I love the minutia. That's the most interesting part to me.
Yeah.
Is the minutia and the research and all that other goofball crap.
When it's something that you care about, it doesn't even feel like you're learning, because you're pulling on the thread. You're going from Wikipedia to this entry to that entry, and you don't even realize that you're absorbing information because you just want to know the next part of it. That's me in Disneyland. I'll tell you anything about Disneyland because that's my where my heart's at. Like I love learning about the history of it.
Yeah, I just want to go walk in the tunnels once underneath.
Well, those aren't in Disneyland. That's Disney World.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Disney World, they built it up on a stage because they realized that they needed to be able to
get everywhere quickly.
Yeah. But Disneyland, you can't.
I thought at Disneyland they had service tunnels and janitorial tunnels.
You can't build you can't build basements in California, in Southern California,
because they flood.
Yeah,
so it's the same thing as pools in Florida. They have to keep them full of water, or they pop out of the ground.
Right. So but when they got out to the swampland, it was already shaky land. So they made the idea to put everything basically up on a stage. So when you're walking around Disney World, you're actually walking on a second floor at all times because it's a giant building.
Yeah.
You're on the stage and there's something underneath you. But at land, you're just at surface.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That, and I would like to go through It's a Small World at some point with the lights on so I can see and just stop and look at every little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. But we digressed into Disneyland.
I'll always get there.
There was a question there where it was Masters. There we go. Circling it back to Masters of the Universe. I just kind of came back and I knew it as a collector. I was what interested me, but more so as the line itself. I said, okay, what do I find the most interesting and what hasn't been done? And same thing. I just put my filter on what I enjoyed. So the first thing I came back to is like Skeletor. Skeletor is to me, more interesting than He-Man within the world of Masters of the Universe.
Agreed.
One, killer character design. He's got a giant skull on his face.
Real.
What else?
The hood.
Come on.
I'm not a fan of purple, but I'll let it slide.
Oh, that purple and blue colorway that they did is pretty fucking tight.
I do like monochromatic design, so I'll give it a pass on that end.
So Skeletor's personality is funny. So when we first started back with them, and we wanted to come back with some stuff, the guy we were working with, a guy named Mark Morse at that time, was just sort of like, at first it was sort of this much smaller program. And we came back to him and said, hey, we want to do a much bigger program here. And we're willing to pay for the whole thing, which was part of it. And we were like, we think there's something really cool and we want to do a whole bunch of things. So the original impetus was just doing the muscle figures in Masters of the Universe. That's where this started.
Yeah.
Because I was like, you made muscle and you made Masters of the Universe, but you never made Masters of the Universe muscle? Like, what were you guys thinking?
Yeah.
Like, it's like peanut butter and chocolate right there. So we started with that, and then we came back to them with the idea of the 3 3/4 figures, which was like, okay, what's the transition between Star Wars and He-Man? We know that at that time, when they were in development of it and they were trying to figure out what the new thing would be for Masters of the Universe, you know, they went through a variety of different character designs, and it's very Conan inspired and all this other stuff. We kind of came back with going, okay, as toy nerds, what would have happened? You would have been like, okay, you would have started with the figures that were the hottest selling thing on the market at that time, which was 3 3/4 inch action figures.
Right.
So we came up with this backstory of like, okay, what would have happened if you had made He-Man and Masters of the Universe and prototyped it as 3 3/4 inch action figures? And then we included in a sheet in there that said like an internal review form for Mattel at that time that said, hey, these are really cool and interesting. They're testing well, but how do we differentiate these more from what's in the market? How do we make these more unique? And then eventually they would have evolved into the figures that actually came out. So for us, I was like, that's a cool, interesting way for me to talk about the things that I grew up with and how it transitions into what Masters of the Universe is. So we put that package together. It came in a white mailer box. It said prototype, samples only, you know. We played up
once again, and also feeding into your love of the minutia, because you hunt down things in your collection that are like this, the rare prototype or the one-off. I mean, your Rob Roscop in there is holy grail of skateboard collecting.
It's one of them, yeah.
For my emotions, yeah. I mean, you have the first ever prototype of a Rob Roscop. So here you are, once again, you're making what you want, which is always a great rule in design and product development.
But there has to be a reason. Right. There's a reason that I made those figures. The reason being, you know, same thing, bridging the gap between people that collected Star Wars and people that collected Masters of the Universe. Here is the storyline. Here is the concept. Now that I have the concept drives the packaging design. So therefore the packaging design is going to be a Mattel mailer envelope from the 1980s. Nice. It's going to have this, like even to the point where we have like right across the artwork on the front, we had them lay down like a shipping label sticker, like shipped to Mattel. And we wanted the factory to just slap it across the front of the box anywhere.
Yeah.
Didn't matter where.
Yeah.
Obscure. And they were like, no, we literally had to provide in the artwork this printed dotted line for how it can be randomly placed right across the front of the artwork, obscuring some of the characters. Where, like, if you were talking about that on any other level, they'd be like, you can't put the sticker right over the characters. It's like, no, that's the way it fucking would have come in the mail. They wouldn't have given a shit.
Right.
Just stick it right on there. So it started with that, and that evolved into, hey, we're going to do a whole pop-up shop. We want to do a whole thing. And I was like, look, I don't find He-Man that interesting, but I find Skeletor vastly entertaining and interesting. We're going to make this Skeletor's lair. We're going to make our whole thing about Skeletor. So we went and we made the whole pop-up shop around Skeletor. And we said, okay, same thing. If you were to walk into Skeletor's house, what would it look like?
Right.
What do you walk into? Not, you know, Snake Mountain, but just like, what would Skeletor's office and shop look like? So you walk in, the first thing we did was we had a custom portrait made by Jason Edmonston.
Good friend of mine.
Of Skeletor reclining, holding a little brandy sniffer next to the fireplace and all his books and everything. Sort of the madam or master of the house portrait you'd get in the South.
With the Battle Cat rug on the floor.
And we had the Battle Cat hunting trophy on the back wall and everything. And it was just like, let's play this up and have fun with it. So jumping forward another year, when we came back last year, I was like, you know what, the thing that they haven't done since the 80s is a new cartoon.
So I stumbled on the cartoon, right? Huh? I stumble across this cartoon and I see your name on it and I go, what the fuck is this? A friend of mine in Toronto was like, somebody remade a He-Man cartoon. You got to check it out. It's like, it's amazing because all Skeletor does is just insult everyone around him. And so we watched it. And as he showed it to me, I'm like, oh, I know Brian. He's been on my show before. And I was watching. I'm like, this is so fucking genius. Like, I absolutely adored that cartoon. It was so funny. And I'm like, next time I talk to Brian, I got to figure out how do you go from the action figure into actually producing a cartoon? That's amazing, man.
And it's the same thing. And it's coming back to all the thing we talked about earlier, which is what is the problem? What are you trying to solve? What are you trying to do? And I'm like, okay, if we're getting the reins for the Masters of the Universe, what's the ultimate Masters of the Universe thing? The pinnacle thing. And I was like, it's a fucking new cartoon. Like, there hasn't been a new cartoon in forever. Like, how do we make a new cartoon? And same thing. I'm coming from a design studio. I'm making toys. I've never made a cartoon before, but at the same time, how fucking hard can it be to make a cartoon? You find people that make cartoons and talk to them. And that's what we did. We went out there. We went back to Mattel and we said, okay, hey guys,
Yeah.
do you have any extra, they didn't, but any extra money for PR? Because we talked about this, that, and the other. And originally the idea was it was a 3 to 4 minute cartoon, just a little teaser thing, because that's what people have moments for online. And so we went and
So you saw it as an online thing out of the gate.
yeah, and we were like, if we can do 3 to 4 minutes of animation, it's expensive, but it's not crazy. And it's like, it would just be audacious. Can we do it? And we started talking to some people that we knew and some guy. And then one of the project managers here was like, oh, I know these people that used to do animation for this company I worked for once in New York. Let's give them a call. We started calling around. We got these guys on the phone. They're like, oh, I loved Masters as a kid. Let's figure it out. So we just kind of figured it out. And we started writing the script. And when I came to the script, I was like, okay, He-Man is a very much a goody two shoes by the book, straight laced character. He's a Captain America or any number of these other things.
It's a weird thing because he's the hero, but in my estimation, he's kind of the worst part of the brand.
There's a lot of people that absolutely love him at the same time. So it's just a different point of view in what you're trying to do. And I think that they did not do a significant job, I think, in the past rounding out his character, because his character is sort of based on a Clark Kent Superman thing, which is like, he's this bumbling prince that turns into this hero, but he can't really talk about himself. So there's a lot of character development that's kind of flawed and skewed with him, or just has never been fleshed out. Or Skeletor is completely fleshed out. And the reality is with Skeletor is he only insulted people a few times each cartoon. He was actually fairly serious about what he was trying to do, but that's what everybody remembers. So when we went back, I said, let's turn the whole thing on its ear. Let's not make it a show about He-Man. Let's make it a show about Skeletor.
Yeah.
And turn Skeletor into the hero.
Yeah.
So in this one, you go from being Skeletor as the bad guy to Skeletor is now being attacked by a different bad guy. Now Skeletor is the good guy. So our whole play on it was, how do we invert the world of Masters of the Universe 180 degrees and turn Skeletor into an anti-hero? And the same thing, like, we ramped up the insults, and he's insulting people pretty much most of the time. But even then, like, some people at Mattel were like, I felt like there could be some more insults. I'm like, if you've watched these old shows, this is double or triple what the old insults were. If we do any more, it's going to be 11 for the Spinal Tap reference there.
Yeah.
So, and then through the course of writing it and just wanting to make it awesome, it turned into a 10-minute cartoon. And it was that same thing. In the end, it's like, we'll figure it out. We'll find the money. Let's just do it. Let's just get it made. Because how awesome is it going to be to make our own Masters of the Universe cartoon? I mean, how many people get that opportunity? As you can hear the crickets between Mark and I, like, not that many. So let's do it.
Well, I'm looking at it this way. Guys our age, for me, one of the best things about going back to school was it meant a new season of afternoon cartoons. And I'm raised in the generation of the new cartoon comes out that September. And that means there's going to be a new line of toys for holiday. So I was raised in that marketing program that somebody came up with, like, get them hooked on the cartoon, they'll have to buy the toy, Yeah. And as a collector and somebody from that time, you've done the ultimate. You've made the toy and you've made the cartoon. Like, I'm looking at you like you're a hero because you wrapped up the whole experience.
Yeah, we made the toys of the characters in our cartoon and had them for sale. It's like, and none of that, I got to create characters that are now theoretically, I don't know, they're in the pantheon of history of Masters of the Universe. They're characters. They're in it. I got to do it. So that's coming back to the same thing with Super 7. It's this thing where it's just like, we're getting opportunities very few people get. So let's leverage them. Let's do them. Let's do whatever we can to have fun with this and do as much as we can, because it might all go away. You never know.
I love
it. Might continue, but it might go away.
I love that you do everything based on, while I got this moment, I should do it because it won't be here forever.
No, it's that same thing where everybody's just like, well, if you do, your business is going to, everything's just going to get better next year and better next year. And it's like, it doesn't always happen. It's like, this is your chance. So jump in with both feet. And if you keep jumping in, usually it creates more opportunities. But, if I can go back to my thing, it's like I built Nike Towns in the 90s working at Nike. And they were the preposterously large, amazing retail things. It's like, the reality is, sneaker box aside, it's like, you're never going to get a chance to do that again.
Right.
People don't build retail on that scale anymore.
Right.
Like, you're never going to get that level of freedom and budget to just build.
Don't you feel like if you have the attitude of sit around and wait, a lot of times it never happens?
Oh no! If you sit around, you'll never do anything.
Yeah.
No, that's a different thing that I talk to, especially students all the time about, which is like, just fucking start making stuff. Make it now. Just go do. If you wait for somebody to either give you permission or ask you to do it, you will wait forever. It will never happen. If you do not create the future that you want, you won't get it. It's like portfolios. People, kids coming out of school, they're like, oh, I want to be pick one, pick a genre.
Of design?
Yeah.
I want to be an illustrator.
You want to be an illustrator? Great. Here's my portfolio. I've got 4 logos, 2 websites, an interactive design.
No illustration.
You will never get a job doing illustration.
Yeah.
Your portfolio, if you want to be an illustrator, your portfolio should be 40 illustrations. You want to be a book designer, your portfolio should be 40 book designs. When Chronicle, because they're here, Chronicle is looking for a book designer, and you send in a portfolio of posters and packaging samples and website UI, you're not getting the job.
No.
The guy that might not be as talented as you, but sent them 40 book covers is going to get the job because I'm looking for a book cover guy.
I always tell people on this show, seeing is believing. You got to show the world what you want to do, and then you'll get hired doing it. You got to do a couple on your own. You got to go out of your comfort zone, make a couple on your own, and then the world knows you're capable of doing it. And boom, now you're doing it.
Yeah, nobody can predict what you can do looking at your book.
Right.
But I think it's the same thing. Like when we talk to students, it's always like, here's my portfolio from school. And it's like, okay. And they feel like they've achieved it. They've checked the list. And I think for everybody on this side, it's like, okay, that was the bare minimum we expected you to show up with. What else have you got? What's unique about you?
Yeah.
And, granted, that's coming from a position of a boutique design studio. Right. I'm not looking for an everyman. I'm not looking for this. I'm looking for thinking. I'm looking for thoughts. I'm looking for this. But I'm looking for somebody that knows a bit about what they are, who they are, and what they kind of do and what they're doing. So if you've got projects in your portfolio you don't like, throw them out.
So this is all the mindset, though, of a guy that's raised on skateboarding and punk rock, of you make your own rules, you break your own rules, and then you go make a new set of rules. Like, this is that mindset of just get active, go out there and make it happen.
I think that a lot of it, we've touched on it, I think, before, where a lot of it comes back with a lot of people that grew up with punk rock and skateboarding, especially at that time, because there was no formal structure in place. You couldn't go down the street to your city-owned skate park. Hell, there's skate parks all over the place.
Every city has one now.
And it's amazing, and I love you for it. I couldn't go to Hot Topic and buy a Minor Threat shirt at the mall. But that said, if I could have, I would have loved to have been able to, but I couldn't. So I had to make the shirt on my own because I didn't know where to buy it. And I didn't. So you had to make your own shows. You had to make your own flyers. You had to make your own skate scops. You had to start making the things to do what you wanted to do. And it's not that much work once you get used to doing it. It's just like, oh yeah, you just figure it out. Nobody knows when they get into it. Everybody always tells me like, well, I don't know how to do it. And it's like, I don't know how to make a cartoon.
But I made one.
Right. And I hired a bunch of guys that know how to do the animation. And I said, this is my vision for the cartoon, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds weird. But it's just like, here's the story. Here's how I want it to feel. Here's how I want the people to act.
Right.
And they're like, and then they animate it. I don't need to know how to animate. I have to have the idea. If you've got the idea, start doing it or find some people to help you to figure it out. It's not that hard to do. It just means starting and having some people tell you no, and then finding the person that says yes.
Hey friends, I hope you're enjoying today's episode with the great Brian Flynn of both Hybrid Design and Super 7. A lot of knowledge bombs have been dropped. Hopefully you're hanging in there. You're keeping up with Brian. I was exhausted. I have to tell you, I was like, oh God, I think that my brain can only handle so much more of this. And I got news for you. We're only halfway done, and he doesn't hold back. He keeps going. I think actually at this point, he might just be getting warmed up with all the knowledge. Coming up in part 2, we talk about the advent of youth marketing and really the creation of youth culture. The accessibility of youth allows you to have all the time you need to discover the things that you'll probably hold on to for the rest of your life. Our heroes have taught us something when we were younger, and for our generation, they're teaching us something now. We explore the notion that you don't really have to grow up, and many people are quite relevant at the age of 50, which used to not be a thing. There used to be a cap on the fun, but no longer is that the way that it has to go down. We also talk about enjoying your work and allowing your business to grow, right? You have to keep it fun. You have to enjoy what you're doing. The business, the money, it finds a way. You get better at it. But most importantly, you got to enjoy your craft. And Brian has a great philosophy on don't wait for success to find you. Don't wait for opportunity to come your way. Nobody's going to hand it to you. The world doesn't care if you make it or not. You have to find success. You have to create opportunities. And if this next part of this episode can't inspire you to get your mind trained in that way, lead a horse to water, but I can't make you drink. If you like today's episode, go back, look in the archives if you remember. Gerald Tidwell kind of gives you that same uplifting kick in the ass that sometimes you need. And also the DK&G show, reoccurring segment every other month where we explore sort of the pragmatic approach to creating a successful design career. Not too far off from what our old Flynn here has been able to pull off. All right, hope you're enjoying this. Remember, if you want to hear the second part of today's episode, and yes, we're only at the halfway mark. There's still part 2 to go. Sign up today at adventuresin.design. Become a member of the Circle of Trust. Every day, you unlock the second half of all of our episodes, as well as our archive of over 500 episodes. There's a whole part before this episode that's beating the shit out of you, of Brian Flynn joining us the first time. Many, many other guests, many great episodes. So sign up if you can. Become a member. As you notice, we don't bang you over the head with tons of ads. It's supported by the listeners of this here show. In this part 2, we talk about something that's near and dear to my heart. What if it all came apart? What if everything that you love fell apart? What's the worst thing that would happen? You got to go back to where you came from? Could you do it? Would you go there? Is that really if that's your biggest fear, is that really the worst thing that could happen to you? Is that you have to go back to your roots? Would you go back? Brian doesn't seem to be scared. Seems to realize he won't have to do it. But it's a great discussion on about where you came from and where you got to go and where you want to be. Let's jump into part 2 with Brian Flynn of Hybrid Design and Super 7. I would think that you would be a qualified person to talk about this next concept. When skateboarding came out and Thrasher magazine's around and there's all these ads, all this design, all this merchandise, and the videos start to come around. You know, there's the Bones Brigade show, Ban This, Public Domain, all those videos, and, you know, the other ones, you know, Schmitz Made 'em, Santa Cruz, Wheels on Fire, all that stuff comes out.
Yep.
To me, I feel like it's the advent of youth branding as a youth culture. Like, I don't really know that anything like that existed before that came out.
Yeah, I don't know. I would disagree with that probably. And
Well,
that's
what was
simply
there?
1960s flower power hippie movement. That was a youth movement. Branding, people targeting straight to people that were the youth.
They were.
Yeah. I think the difference is that because it was our time. Whenever the time it is that you're doing it is the most impactful.
Yeah.
So there was clearly, though, at the same time, to your point, though, that is also a boom in that particular style, aesthetic, and voice within pop culture of that era. So it's timed with that. But the 1960s flower power thing was very much a youth movement with youth culture that was then put to them. I would argue that probably disco might also have been a youth movement because not youth in the way that we're thinking about it in 13 to 14, but you're still talking about those are like 18 to 20-year-old people, college kids out dancing kind of thing. I would probably argue to admit that was a new generation coming out of that. That was still, things were disco everywhere. Wonder Woman was on roller skates, for Christ's sake. At some point, I
mean, if you
Xanadu had a movie.
Right. And even if you listen to things like Kiss and Rolling Stones, you can hear their disco influenced songs when they were trying to get a piece of that action because they didn't want to get
left behind.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think the difference is it was younger. The hippies were definitely, you're talking about people that were mostly 16 to 25. I think disco was probably 18 and up. Like you had to go to dance clubs.
Right.
Where skateboarding was definitely all of a sudden it's like, no, this is for 13-year-olds to 16-year-olds, 13 to 18 kind of. It was younger. So I would argue that maybe as a culture that was exported, that was probably the youngest culture that was exported because the previous cultures were older. Like if you're talking about greasers or bikers or any of that other stuff, you had to be old enough to own a car.
Right.
I think what happened with skateboarding, and it's interesting, there's a couple things because you and I can get sucked in all day long about it. Like literally every ad, every skateboard graphic, it's
all precious.
Every bit of it is just like, fuck, that was genius. And you talk to them and they're like, man, I don't know. We had nothing else to do.
They were just living in the moment.
Like, I don't know. So we squirted a guy, covered him in ketchup and rolled him in the grass outside.
Oh,
and
I mean,
he's just like, but it was genius. And they're like, man, we just needed something. But that was, I think the youth rebellions and youth genres, whatever that you want to call them from beforehand, you were predominantly older. Now all of a sudden 12 and 13-year-olds could get on a skateboard and could be part of it. So I think they were able to tap into, in that degree, a younger group of people.
Well, the skateboard also had a more desirable price point than, say, a BMX bike. Because when kids started riding pro BMX bikes in my neighborhood, my dad's like, I'm not buying you a $350 bike. You're an asshole. I'm not doing it. But a $55 skateboard, you could put together some money and get a used one for $25. I think the price point on that world was a little bit easier. But when you look at that world, it's fashion, it's art, it's design sensibility. What has impacted pop culture more than skateboarding since its advent?
It's hard because you and I are within that vernacular, so we see it everywhere, and we're oblivious to other genres.
Right.
We can sit there and say that, and you go, okay, but I can guarantee you that the skateboarding industry is a fraction of the 4-H industry.
Yeah.
Or the country and western industry, or NASCAR industry, or any number of these other things. We see its influence in its reverberations across all sorts of, I think, layers of the creative community,
right?
Where many of those other genres, I keep blanking on a right word to call it, but many of those other sort of, interest groups, whatever, they just don't float into our customer base as much. Like if all of a sudden you run into a designer that's a hardcore fixed gear cyclist, that doesn't freak you out. You're like, oh yeah, there's a lot of guys that are really into bikes, bike culture, messengers, all that other stuff. But if all of a sudden you're like, oh no, like I'm really into raising horses, you'd be like, oh, well, that's different.
Yeah.
That's unique.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because that those people don't cross over into this world as much, or there's less opportunity for them to cross over into this world. But I would argue that, I would say that for us to argue that nothing has accomplished as much or been as influential is because we're seeing it through a very narrow sliver of our world.
Well, and when you look at our world and where I see the influence of early, that golden era of skateboard design and marketing, I think that it influenced music, entertainment, youth culture to come, sort of that world. So I did it affect farming? No. But did it affect the way that the hot topics and the things would sort of birth up and that would come about? Yeah, I think so.
But But then you could easily come back and argue that hip hop has probably been even more influential and more global than skateboarding has
You
been.
son of a bitch. You just
know.
burnt me. You burnt me right there on my own show. Thank you for listening to Adventures in Design podcast. To hear part 2 of today's episode, visit adventuresin.design. Click where it says Circle of Trust and help support the only daily talk show designed for creative professionals just like you. Thank you for listening. Good day and good design.